Welcome to another episode of Distory with Kate and Kirk. Today, we're going to finish Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, the entire experience that we have been doing and working since January. I feel like we've never left this whole entire series. So we're going to go through the end of Track B in Walt Disney World, all the way to the Toad-ins and what happens after Mr. Toad's gets replaced. So that's what we'll be focusing on today. And to explore and finish up this amazing wild ride is Kate, the Disney Cicerone. How we doing tonight, Kate?
I'm doing great. I think this is going to be a really exciting episode because there's some things that I don't think most people have seen that happen kind of after Mr. Toad of what could have been, but never happened. So I'm very, very excited to dig into that. And a couple of things too, as we finish this ride that most people might not remember from the actual ride itself. So excited to dig in. Why don't we go to where we left off? I'm going to pull up the layout here so you can see where we've been so far. So Track B is there on the right. We headed into Toad Hall first. Then we went through the library. There was a small blackout section, which is just black. And then into the barnyard, into the barn. And that is where we left off last episode. So now we're going to go into the one-way street and Town Square. So we'll just run through the video of that. I just have a couple of comments about Town Square. And then we're going to head on the far side there. It will be the jail. So that will be our first major scene that we're diving into here. Kirk, do you have the video pulled up for that?
I do.
Oh, great.
All right. So first up, we see a judge, and he looks like more like a policeman, but he has like a gavel and he has keys, like less judge and more coppers. Well, it is a cop, but yeah. And then we go right into a jail scene, and then I'm going to pause right there. I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's
right
a lot.
There in those two parts. So we need to kind of break them down.
Yeah. Before we pop into the jail, I would like to bring up just a couple of small things that I found out about Town Square in particular. Like, we talked about those lamps that were in Town Square and how I was like, they know that Rolly Crump said that he pulled them over from Disneyland. And I was like, I can't find these anywhere in Disneyland. Well, Kirk, I think I found them. And they, I think, are in New Orleans Square in Disneyland. So this is what the lamps look like. This is a prop that's pulled from the ride. And then you can see this is what they look like in New Orleans Square. Very, very similar top. There's maybe just like one element of design around the base of it that is a little bit different, but they're very, very, very similar. So I think they're
Kate, I would say that fun fact would be enlightening.
Oh.
Lamp jokes.
Oh, but I'm chat. Anyway, there's also something that we didn't talk about. There's an optician's shop, I guess, that's in Town Square that I had missed on previous ones. So I don't need to go into detail about this, but there is like some glasses that look like they have eyes in them that are hanging. It's like a sign for an optician that's inside Town Square. So just wanted to mention that. And I also don't think we mentioned that this Shire sign, like Upshire, Lancashire, not so sure. This sign is actually spinning, and I don't think we mentioned that previously. So here's this guy who's in red hanging on to this, and then he's spinning, he's turning around. So, and the bike wheel turns too. I think we forgot to mention that. So
kinetic movement in this scene.
Yeah, and the also Mr. Toad, who's on top of Cyril's hoof. He apparently did spin around on top of Cyril's hoof until the 1993 refurb. So,
oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, so we didn't notice that because a lot of our video footage is from later in the 90s because there isn't a lot of great footage from when his ride first opened.
Right.
So I just thought that was a really interesting fact that he used to spin around and then he stopped. So
I do think that those spectacles, don't they kind of give you a little bit of Alice when she's in the woods?
Yeah. She puts on that like creature with it looks like glasses.
It's like glasses with eyes and a nose.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, that being said, shall we head on into the jail?
Yeah.
Okay. So like Kirk said, we go into a police station and the very first thing we see is this. It's like a policeman that looks like a judge. He's like sitting behind like a courtroom desk.
Yeah, he's behind a podium. He's holding a gavel. So he's like got all of the makings of a judge, but yet homeboy is in a straight up copper outfit.
Yeah. So he's not a judge, but apparently he's acting like a judge today because he's got a gavel and everything. And the lamps too, the lights on either side, I think they lift up and down because there's animation there, which is really interesting because they look like they should just be sitting straight on the desk, but they lift it up and down for movement. There's also like a ring of keys that is on the front side of that desk. There's also a portrait on the wall of what I'm guessing is like the police chief, maybe. I don't know if you had it.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like the guy who's behind the chair is the chief, because he doesn't really look like a judge. He looks like somebody.
Yeah.
But he's got all these striping, so I feel like he would be high up in the police. I don't know who that guy is.
I think it's probably like police chief, and they're honoring him by having his picture on the wall. And it could be him. It could be him, like a younger version.
Like when
of
he
him.
was young.
Yeah. That's what I would lean towards the storytelling there.
I don't know why his gavel, but his gavel looks more like a beer keg than it does a gavel.
It does.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
It's like a stick on a beer keg, because it looks like a Cooper's ring and staves. It doesn't look like a gavel, but it is a big gavel.
It's like oversized. It's like the size of his head.
Yeah, and I think that, again, that's purposeful because we see this flash real quick. The other thing to note is that our police officer judge is pointing like we have been judged, and he's guiding us to where we go next, which will be that jail.
Yeah. At this point, then, we move on. There's not a lot of great photos from in here, so I'm going to warn you about that. We do see some posters that are on the wall that are like wanted posters. And the first one we see is wanted Mr. Toad. There's Toad's face. And then it's for 100,000 pounds. So Toad has
pretty cheap.
Already has a warrant out for his arrest at this point. And then there's a couple of other ones, some that I could not get great photos of. Here's a better picture of Mr. Toad. This is what it looks like when it was pulled out of the attraction, just to get a better shot of it. Some of the other posters you can see behind this policeman who's balancing on a chair with a baton. And you can see there's one that says Liverpool Lil is out of the picture, but it is there. And something that says Spindly. And then underneath it says Malcolm the Mutilator, which I looked into, Kirk. I couldn't find anything. Some things were saying maybe it refers to Malcolm X or just a fictional character. I lean towards fictional character for this, but I don't know if you have thoughts about that one in particular.
I just think it's supposed to be funny because mutilation or mutilator as a personification of a human or a creature is funny.
Yeah, I think so too.
I don't think it's attached to anything. It's definitely not attached to Malcolm X. No way.
No, I know. We looked into
that.
They would
never make that creatively.
I don't think it is. I went down that rabbit hole for like 2 seconds, and I was like, no, this is not it.
Also, isn't it interesting that Toad is twice the bounty versus Pete? You would think Pete would be worse, like as a villain, like a legitimate villain. I thought that was an interesting storytelling piece.
Yeah, so it's actually Piccadilly Pete. We can't see the Piccadilly in the picture, but that is what it is, and it is 50,000 pounds. And yeah, Mr. Toad's more valuable than Piccadilly Pete. But he does look like the villain Pete, which is one of the small rabbit trails I have for this scene, if you don't mind, Kirk.
Oh, cool. Yeah, please. I thought, honestly, when I looked at this, I didn't realize that he was not just like your normal standard Pete, the bad guy Pete.
Well, he is.
He's Piccadilly Pete.
He's Piccadilly Pete in this storytelling, but he really looks like the Pete that we know from Disney history. We see this villain Pete show up again and again and again. And he is actually the oldest continuing Disney character who debuted in the Alice cartoon, like the Alice comedies, in 1925 in the Alice Solves the Puzzle cartoon. And so he was known as Bootleg Pete, who is a collector of rare crossword puzzles.
Gosh, he looks so different.
He does. He looks more like a bear. He's styled more like a bear at this point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's like a bear versus, what is he, a dog?
Oh, well, we'll get into that. So.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah, but so here's what he looks like in that. He definitely is more styled like a bear, but he does have a peg leg. So they say bootleg, but he has a peg leg. He's like reaching for Alice, who's terrified of him. It's a whole crossword thing. It's actually
also, he must be like really fun to have at a dinner party. You're like, oh, Bootleg Pete is here. Oh, what do you do, Bootleg Pete? Oh, nothing. Just a collector of rare crossword puzzles. What?
It's like, do you have any? Can I steal them?
It's just a weird thing to be collecting.
It really is. But he also then showed up in the Oswald the Lucky Rabbit cartoons. Different look here. He looks a little bit more like a dog here, which is actually quite funny. But he still has a peg leg. His name was still Pete. So at this point, he's still kind of the same villain. And then he showed up, of course, in Steamboat Willie. And so you can see some of the original sketches from that cartoon here. And this is what he looks like inside Steamboat Willie, which most of us would have seen by now. But here is when he kind of first takes on the personification of a cat. And the reason for that is because a cat is a natural enemy of a mouse, which of course is Mickey Mouse. And so Pete is actually a cat. And in Steamboat Willie, though, he has 2 legs. He doesn't have a peg leg. But if you notice in this one, he actually does have a peg leg. So it's weird because he goes back and forth between having 2 legs to having 1. And I was like, what's up with that? So I looked it up, and this was explained by Disney cartoonist Floyd Gottfredson. He explained this in a 1941 comic strip, The Mystery at Hidden River. He explains that Pete's leg was replaced by a more realistic prosthetic. And so here's the actual cartoon. He says, "Come on, little man." He says it in his accent. I can't read this. It's like, "Come on, little man. Pierre, she's gonna take you to big trees. Okay, am I ready? Hey, that's funny. No peg leg." He said, so he's like, "Where's your leg? Like there's no peg leg here." He says, "How come, Pete? What about the old wooden kicker?" He says, "I have replaced them with new model store leg. Pierre, she's now streamlined like modern design, eh?" So he's saying like, hey, like I used to have a wooden leg, but now I get this newfangled modern prosthetic leg. And so that's how he explains the fact that he sometimes has 2 legs and sometimes has 1.
Lieutenant Pete, new legs. New legs, Lieutenant Pete, new legs. Yeah, that's right. Mickey, they're straight from it's like the space shuttle.
Yeah, exactly that. That's pretty much what happened there. So anyway, that's all I have about Pete in general, unless you have any other
That's
comments.
so cool.
Yeah.
I love that. Wait, so is he still a cat? Like, he's still a cat in this comic strip?
Yeah.
Like, he is never a dog? He's always a cat?
He's always a cat. Ever since Steamboat Willie, he's been a cat, because that's Mickey's
The only
enemy.
thing I could think of, I guess the only way I can kind of mirror him is, like, Fat Cat, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
From, like, Rescue Rangers days. But, like, because he's always shaved,
Yeah.
you know, I always thought he was a dog.
Yeah. He kind of is similar to Goofy. He has some features that are similar to Goofy. But
Right,
he's
right.
like a shorter
That's where-
snout.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, much shorter snout.
Yeah. So,
But it's the hair, I guess, around the tufts.
yeah, he's a
The
cat.
more you know.
He's a cat. So Pete the cat, Piccadilly Pete is up there on the wall. And then we also have another poster, which this is the best photo I could get of it. And I have no idea what this says, but I know the poster on the right-hand side says something about February 27th. And that's all I've got. I looked on every single video I could find.
Yeah, nothing. Date-wise.
Nothing. So there is something else over there, but I can't tell what it is. And
Fun fact, a lot of people don't know this. Goofy is a dog. He is confirmed a dog. He is a bloodhound. What's weird, though, and this will really bake your noodle, so is Pluto. And he's also a bloodhound.
but he walks on all
Why
fours.
one talks and the other one does not, and one's a pet and the other one has kids, I don't know. But deal with it.
We just don't question these things. We just accept them for what they are.
Move on.
That's all we do.
Move on. Straight, if you question them, straight to jail.
Straight to jail, which is where we're
Straight
going
to
right
jail.
now. It's straight
Right.
to jail. So at this point, then we see some angry policemen who are standing in front of the jail cells, and they are flats that like push out of the way as you head towards the jail. There's some weasels hanging on to the bars, and the idea is that we're going to burst through these cell doors and into the jail. Are you ready to move into the jail, Kirk?
Sure.
Okay, let's go. So popping on into this jail, do you have anything about the weasels in general here before I pop off on all the different things they're doing in here?
So I always, because we see ball and chain a couple of times in Disney, and of course there's that old colloquial saying, "My old ball and chain," which is like your significant other. It's literally a ball and chain. That's what they're actually talking about. And so it was attached to a prisoner via a chain, and this started around the 18th and 19th century. The metal was typically made of a heavy iron ball, and it was meant to prevent escape. Most commonly used, though, in prison camps or penal labor camps, because in those style labor camps, people would need to have more freedom and movement. That's why it was always affixed to your ankle, because if you needed to swing a sledgehammer or do some sort of other physical enduring task, you could still physically move with these, but it would slow you down and it would be extremely difficult for you to flee. What's weird, in my personal opinion, is why on earth they're using ball and chains while the Weasels are in the jail. And the only thing that I can surmise is that the Weasels are very crafty and it's very easy for them to get out and escape normal circumstances. So they need to slow them down any way possible, as all the Weasels have balls and chains attached to them.
Yeah, I mean,
and they're still leaving.
They're still leaving.
The dude's still going out the window on the right. So it's not like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's it's funny that they don't even look like they need to break the bars of the window because they look so thin they could probably just slip between them. But maybe because of the ball and chain, that's what made them have to like rip the bars and bend them out so they could get through the window.
Yeah,
because
they are definitely slinky. If you've ever had like ferrets before, when you hold them, it's like holding a limp spaghetti noodle after it's cooked. Like there's bones in there, but you wouldn't know it because those things are limp. You could just wiggle those things anywhere, you know?
Yeah. So there's a lot going on in this scene. Basically, it's all the Weasels on these like wooden bunk beds and a bench that are, some of them look like they were sleeping and were just disturbed by you bursting into the jail cell. But some of them are actually doing some mischievous things. So there's one that is down on the floor that is digging his way out of prison. There's one with a ball of TNT that is red. And I did look this up. I was just like, was TNT ever in like a ball form? And it was in the German armed forces in 1902 for World War I, used to fill TNT into like artillery shells that were round. So it was used. But I think it's really just like visual economy. You're going to go buy it really fast. Let's make it bright red and obvious that they're trying to like blow up something.
They the traditional bomb in cartoons was always a circular metal ball with a like a straw or rope affixed fuse. So that's exactly what this is. But the only way to know that it's not another ball and chain, which they have all of these other metal circular shapes, is that they had to do the giant red coloration to know warning, danger, TNT. Like obviously that wouldn't be the case.
Yeah, but obviously it's like, he's lifting it above his head. It could easily have been like he's just holding his ball and chain above his head, which would have been silly. So, and it, interesting you say about fuse, because this fuse actually looks like it's really low, as if it's about to go off, which is would not be good for this Weasel since he's holding it in a room full of his friends.
It's right above his head. Also, who gave him that?
Who gave him that, and what was he going to do with it? How would he blow up anything?
Where are the matches?
How would he blow up anything in that room and not blow them up too?
Yeah.
I have a lot of questions.
I mean, it would make sense if somebody on the outside, like a Weasel on the outside, affixed it to the wall and then they all hid somewhere. But that's not the case. This dude's just holding it. He's got his Oxford loafers on and he's just no cares.
Anyway, I do have a couple of great photos of this. This is the guy digging in the floor. This is what he actually looks from the backside, which is really fun.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, just a wooden flat. And then just from other angles, you can see these Weasels looking extra surprised as they're hanging out in their bunk beds. This is what he looks like. One of them looks like from when they got pulled out of the attraction. You can see just the flat prop there. And kudos also to our friend Jason, who sent in a lot of these photos for Distory. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate that. And then here's also one of it's like in a parking lot of these Weasels. But this one's interesting. This is on its side. So I was like, where are these Weasels at? Because I don't see any climbing like this. And I was like, oh no, this is just the bunk bed that's flipped on its side. So
yep.
And here's one, though. I don't remember seeing this one in there, Kirk. And it looks like there's a Weasel that's holding a bag that looks like he has his chain, that's his ball and chain inside a bag, maybe hiding it. Or maybe he's holding TNT in the bag. I don't know. But it's something round in his bag. And he looks like he's like hitchhiking. Like, get me out of here. And I don't know where this guy shows up in this attraction, but I'm assuming it's somewhere near this scene.
I'm leaning towards our visual ride-throughs are always looking left because that's the more front and center, and it's probably towards the right.
Yeah, that's what I would say too. I agree.
I got one quick thing with the Weasels up, and it's about black and white striping being instantly recognizable and humiliating for criminals. This started, though, coincidentally in the United States and not in England in the mid 1800s. And it was a psychological tool, not only for it be easy to spot prisoners when they tried to escape, unlike modern kind of like camo clothing. And they were always horizontal to serve the purpose of high visibility, zero privacy. No civilian would ever mistake them for any other person. So if they had escaped, citizens would instantly identify them. But also it would strip away their identity, as it didn't give them any kind of personalization, and it gave them uniformity. So it reinforced the idea of punishment and shame, as prisoners were inmates or numbers and not physical names.
Huh. Interesting.
And it's not until the 1900s that striped uniforms get replaced with solid colored uniforms, particularly orange or khaki, because they seemed more humane and less demeaning. But even till today, everyone uses that black and white striping to denote that you are a prisoner.
That's interesting. Something else that I'm looking at in this picture is, you see on the right-hand side, there's a ball and chain, but it has, the chain part has is white, almost like chalk marks on the wall behind it. And I was like, what in the world is that? I'm pretty sure that's just to make the chain show up more, because otherwise it's a dark chain against a dark wall.
Yeah.
Because it follows the path of the chain, and there doesn't seem to be a reason for it.
Visual thing.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's like electrified or something. It makes no sense.
Right. Well, that's interesting, Kirk. Thanks for adding in that detail about the striped.
You're welcome, Kay. I'm so glad that you found that interesting.
It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, no worries.
All right. Are we ready to head out of the jail?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's break out of jail. Let's do it.
Let's break out of jail. You want me to visually take us through?
Yeah. So we're heading out of jail and into the prison. And Kirk's going to show us here. Take us there.
Okay. So again, real quick, we see the cops. We go into the jail scene. That guy with the TNT is ridiculous. The shovel guy is my favorite. And then boom, we bust out the door, unlike the Weasels, and we go out into the countryside filled with trees. There is a getaway car filled with Weasels, and they're holding guns. There's also police holding guns, chasing them down. And then we start heading towards the railroad tracks, and I'll stop us there.
Perfect. One of the first things we see are these. So we're basically seeing a shootout between the Weasels on the outside, which I think the storytelling is that this is like the getaway car for the Weasels that are escaping. I think that they're rescuing their friends, and they're outside the prison, and they're just like waiting for them to all pile out of jail and then drive away with them, I think is what's happening here. I don't know if you have other thoughts about that, but that's what I think the story is.
Yeah, I don't have anything else.
And so there's actually a shootout going on, and so they all have different versions of guns. And what happens here is there are lights that light up that show like flashes in the circles of their weapons, so that they actually shoot back and forth. I feel like it might have been an effect that was added later, though, because I'm looking at this picture and they look like just painted flats. But
yeah.
Definitely, you can see at this one how some of them are red and some of them are not. So those are the flashes of them lighting up. But I did look up this car, Kirk, about what kind of car this would be, and I think I
love that.
I think I found it. So
nice.
I think it's likely a 1903 Clement 12/16 horsepower rear entrance tonneau, which looks like this.
Oh, cool.
So this automobile was produced 1 year before Adolphe, I'm going to butcher this guy's name, Adolphe Clement Bayard Company moved into the manufacture of racing cars. So this is a prototype of early four-cylinder engineering. It was the pinnacle of power and performance at the time of its release, and it had an advanced transmission, offered drivers 3 forward gears and a reverse, and an inventive lubrication system shared oil from the engine's cooling system to aid movement of critical big end bearings. So the vehicle's tubular steel chassis as well was also innovative. Most others in the era continued to incorporate frames of reinforced wood. So the fact that it has a steel chassis was really important to the development of vehicles at this point. But I think it's this kind of car, because you can see the double windshield that it has. It has like one pane and then has another pane above it. And also the 2 rows of seats and the lights in the front. The side is just a little bit different in its styling in terms of like the fender, but the rest of it looks pretty darn close to me.
Yeah, I mean, that windshield is so iconic. The fact that it's double seated, the fact that it has the horn in the similar place, the fact that it's a hand crank start, all lines up. I think you nailed it.
Yeah. Do you notice also the horn kind of looks like a hidden Mickey?
The one on the attraction, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, not the
for sure.
not the real car, sure. That would be fun though if it was on the real car. Anyway, so that's all I have about that. Do you have anything about that in particular?
No, because I'm like, you know me, I'm a big fan of those little bulb horns.
Oh.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So the other interesting part of this car is apparently the rear entrance was a big deal for it. So it had a little door that swung open on the back side of it. So if you're wondering how those weasels climbed into the back side of that car, well, it could have been a little door like this.
That makes sense that it would be a great getaway car because literally you could have the car. Although in this instance, it's kind of silly because they're not set up facing away from the jail.
No,
you know,
they didn't plan this very well. That's what I'm getting.
Nah, they're weasels, bro. What do they? What do they know? But they also have really snappy looking sweaters. So what am I gonna say?
To the left side, we see what the police are. They have a red paddy wagon that says police on the side. And I love that there's also like a gun that's coming out of the side of the vehicle.
Yeah, what's up with the gun port?
It's so weird.
That guy can't even see where he's shooting. It's just literally, there's no spot for your eyes. You're just shooting blind out a gun hole.
So I looked up paddy wagons in general because I was interested in the verbiage of paddy wagon. So this is actually one that's from the late 1800s here. This was actually in Portland, Oregon, where this one is from. So the word paddy wagon was first referred to a wheelbarrow, especially a small or shoddy one. So it was a wheelbarrow, more likely like an Irish wheelbarrow. Okay. So that was a paddy wagon. Then police wagons were referred to as patrol wagons in the late 1800s. And the two ideas came together in 1906 when the Association of Irish Wheelbarrow blends with the patrol wagon driven by the Irish American police officers. So they were driving a patrol wagon and the Irish American police officers were driving it around. And so that became a paddy wagon. But it's interesting that the paddy wagon term actually did come from America because it was first recorded in a Menasha record of Wisconsin on the 4th of October, 1906. It said, Adrian Clark doffed his wearing apparel and stutteringly announced his intention for self-checking out to a local bartender when the patrol arrived, and he was taken in the paddy wagon to the police station where he regained his senses. So that's the first time we kind of see it in print as paddy wagon, but people would just, refer to it. But we also saw a paddy wagon in the Disneyland version that is also red and has the word police on it. This, of course, came later in 1983, so I think it was taken from that version in 1971 from Disney World. So I think that's where we got that from. Just past the cars, we see some policemen that are hanging on to trees. And this is one, obviously he's not on the ride in this one, but he's hanging onto a trunk of a tree like you're going to run into him. Here's a couple of them. They're just trying to get out of the way and they're holding on for dear life. They go by really fast, so it's very hard to see it in the video.
And they do have kinetic too on these ones.
Yeah, they move out of the way, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They like push forward, just like kind of like if you were going through like a parking gate or something, it swings open.
Right. And then there is a gate that you go through that has a policeman on the left side that says stop, holding a bright red stop sign, and then one on the right who has a whistle and he's holding out his hand saying stop, which of course is something we got from the Disneyland version from 1955, the idea of a bobby with a whistle and telling you to stop. And this guy does have a baton too on the left. I just noticed that. But they're standing on like some piles of logs, which is weird. They're not just standing.
Yeah, why?
They're like, I know. It's like they're not just, I wonder if it's just to bring them up higher so that you see them better.
Yeah, because like, why would you stand on them?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's weird. So, but they push out of the way, and then we keep on moving. This is actually a really fun scene of the back of what they looked like, just to see the mechanism of how these things moved out of the way. Just wanted to share that real quick. And then we go towards the train tunnel. Oh, sorry, I do have this photo of him. This is when they were taking out of the ride. This is what they look like as they were removed. And then as we head towards the train tunnel, we do see a signalman on the right. Remember on the other track, he was like in a rain slicker because it was the rain room. And it must not be raining on this side because he's just chilling with his, like, he looks like an engineer. He has like his blue and white striped outfit with like a red kerchief, which we talked about in our Big Thunder series about the red handkerchief and how that's meaningful in Disney history. So I love that he has a little checkered one here. And he does have a little lantern in his hand, so that's how we know he's a signalman. And he does have he's kind of like waving his arms like, get out of the way, right? So
yeah.
And then we head into the train tunnel, and it's got the same like dinging, lights and the bar that moves exactly like the other side. So I didn't really.
What did the dinging sound like?
Ding, 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 ding.
Yay!
Make Kirk stay. So you can see we then head over into the train tunnel, which is identical to the other side. And down into the hot place after that. I do have in the train, I have this really fun picture, Kirk. I think you'll like this one. This is the train light gag electrical box that they could turn it on or off.
I like that.
Mm-hmm. And so then we head back into the hot place, which is identical to the other side, except it's mirrored. So it's just everything's flipped the opposite direction. But I didn't have any notes for this because I was like, this is pretty much exactly the same. And we've talked about this a lot.
Why don't I take us through the train sequence real quick and the hot place, and then that way people can have a visual of that.
That sounds great.
And then we'll call it on that portion of the ride.
That sounds great.
All right, so we're heading into our train. There's our crossroads pushing out of the way, and then we make that big sweeping turn. Although in this one, it's really funny. They're actually, they get broken down. So they're like stuck in here for a hot second.
Yeah, it's fun. Well, you can see the lights lighting up of the guns that are shooting. Yeah.
Yeah, as they keep on blasting away. So, all right. But you get good movement on.
Look at him go.
Look at, he's like flapping away. He looks great.
That's the signalman. Yep.
Yeah, I wish he got stopped more in this because it'd be great to see the animation of everything else. Look, there's the control panel.
And then they're like looking backwards for this whole scene, which is...
Yeah, I don't know. I think they were trying to figure out what broke and why,
Yeah, so we kind of missed the train light, but it's exactly the same as it was on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So when I did find out, Kirk, that the railroad ties were added to this ride in the train sequence, like the ones that go bump, bump, bump,
so you'll
bump,
feel
bump,
it?
bump. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were added in the remodel of 1993, but not for very long. And then they removed them for whatever reason. So I don't know if it was because it was like disturbing the ride vehicles or guests didn't like it, or they just didn't think it was effective. I don't know why they were removed, but they weren't there originally in 1971, which I think is interesting. They just added them in the refurb and then took them back out.
Yeah.
Oh, and we also have a comment from our good friend Dean, who is from England. He said they didn't use English crossroads or say level crossings. So they used Americanized railroad crossings instead of English ones, which is interesting. Okay, so at that point, we then unload from this. I do have one observation I thought was really interesting from Widen Your World. They are the ones that made this observation that on track A is the only side with any female human characters. And it featured not 1, but 5, 6 if you include the painting of Rapunzel that we saw. And track B is the only side that contains law enforcement figures. It was also the only side where McBadger could be found, while Ratty only appeared along in track A. So I thought it was interesting that there was only female characters on one side. And Rolly Crump really did say he meant this to be, I can't say the word that he used. It was supposed to be like a mind game that, like people are like, well, I saw this on this side, and like, well, I saw this on this side, and like, you came off and like, how come we saw different things, and like, and he couldn't. I think it was the person from Wine Your World also said that when you were a kid, you tried to remember which track was your favorite. It took you forever to remember that. Oh yeah, if I got this side, then I got to see the Weasels in the keg room, and this side I got to see this thing, and it would take them a while to remember which was on which side. So you would luck of the draw, depending on which side you got on, if you got to see some of your favorite characters, which I think is really a fun element that didn't appear in any other Disney rides,
Heck yeah.
Yeah. So at this point, Kirk, do we want to take a quick break and talk about some of the things we have going on at Walrus Carp, Disney Cicerone?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right. Why don't you hop on in?
All right. I have from Walrus Carp, we talked about this before, but if you want to remember Mr. Toad Forever, we have our Always Absurd, in Latin, Semper Absurda t-shirt. You can get them for $26 or $30, depending on the size that you are. But yeah, it's a little love for our friend, Mr. Toad. And then we also had our brand new Croc Charms, our little Sunny Eclipse ones come out. So our little tiny cosmic alien friend. And again, you can get all this stuff for free shipping over at walruscarp.com.
I have something pretty exciting happening over here at Disney Cicerone. I have a new book coming out this next week. So, woo-hoo! Yeah.
Next week, my gosh.
I know, it happened really fast. So, Glimmer of Pixie Dust, Finding Our Hope in the Disney Story will be available on Amazon. I'm hopeful it will be there on Tuesday, on Tax Day. Was it April 15th, I think? 14th, 15th? I don't know. Next week. So in any case, it'll be available on Amazon, also Barnes & Noble for a paperback version, and also it'll be on Kindle Unlimited. So if those of you who like to read the digital version and already have a subscription, free for you to read along with your subscription as well. So A Glimmer of Pixie Dust, Finding Our Hope in the Disney Story, brand new book that is about a lot of collection of curated writings about the Disney parks, integrating Disney history as well as encouragement. And this one in particular focuses a lot on hope, which I feel like we need a lot these days. There's a lot going on in the world. And I feel like the thing I keep hearing from people over and over again is that they feel very kind of overwhelmed, or like everything's kind of like an unprecedented event. And so hopefully these stories about Disney Imagineering, about the parks, about Disney animation, hopefully gives you guys just a little bit of extra hope and a boost here as you work your way through some of the stuff that is going on in our world. So,
yeah, usually when I wake up, I am filled with dread and regret and don't want to move. But then I grab a Glimmer of Pixie Dust and I feel better. And I get up there and realize that life is really fantastic.
There you go. There you have it.
But you need to have those Disney stories.
Yeah. And just a little side note for this one, just kind of behind the scenes, this book really was written alongside my other book, Who the Mirror Reflects, which is a fiction story. And I wrote them at the same time, at the same year. And so it's really interesting how, like, me as an author and my mindset was in a very similar place, but they're different books. And so it's kind of, I don't know how I managed to write 2 books in a year, but I did. And so this one is kind of echoes some of the same themes that are in that other book. So if you enjoyed that one, you might enjoy this one as well. So
yeah.
Buy
it. You'll like it.
Thanks, Kirk.
You're welcome.
All right. Are we ready to move on into...
Yeah.
I think I called this section The Demise of Mr. Toad.
So, oh, that's so sad. Don't say that.
But it's really,
that makes me so sad.
It's what happened. So
yeah, you're right.
So the demise of Mr. Toad really starts right around the time Michael Eisner comes into the picture here.
Yes, Michael Eisner, the greatest man to have ever come after Walt Disney for the parks.
No.
Thank you very much, Michael Eisner.
No, we had a debate about this. For those of you who are newer to Distory, we did an entire debate on Michael Eisner because we stand on different sides of the fence about how his influence in Disney, and Kirk's a huge fan and I am not. So anyway, he comes on the scene.
Bring Eisner back. Bring him back.
He comes on the scene in 1984, which is a great year. And he, of course, introduced lots of budget cuts and changes to the park. Attractions that were considered too costly or outdated were closed and replaced with new ones that would help draw more crowds, profits, a younger crowd sometimes, depending on what it was. At this point, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride was still very, very popular with guests, so much so that they even upgraded their cars to make 2 rows of seats in 1993, which we've already talked about in the series.
Nice job, Eisner. Way to go.
To raise capacity. But in 1997, some rumors start to spread in Disney. And so, Kirk, do you want to tell us what happened then?
Yeah, so on October 22nd, 1997, the Orlando Sentinel, and I have the article up here, by Jill Jordan Spitz, wrote on the front page, "It may be a goodbye to Mr. Toad and hello to Winnie the Pooh and Buzz Lightyear at the Magic Kingdom." So this was a straight up rumor that the Orlando Sentinel had heard and published. So it said Disney officials are considering a number of changes to the update to their oldest Central Florida theme park, which is reaching the end of a 16-month celebration of its 25th anniversary. Among them is likely but not yet firm plan to close Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, a staple of the Magic Kingdom since opening in 1971, and replace it with a ride based on Winnie the Pooh, which has seen recent surge in popularity. More certain plans to close Take Flight, formerly Dream Flight, If You Had Wings, and in January, make it Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin. And then they talk about how they're going to upgrade the Tiki Room to Tiki Room under new management. So, dude, this reminds me of like commonplace, like this is what I would post on TikTok, if I heard rumors of stuff. The Orlando Sentinel was straight up publishing rumors. And here's the craziest part is that this is October 22nd, 1977. We don't hear a single other thing about this for almost a year. It's not until September 7th, 1998 that we hear more things.
Yeah, and they straight up just published a rumor that it's like an inside source that somebody heard something and then they said something they shouldn't and it got to the wrong person and that's what happened.
Oh yeah, it got to somebody at the Orlando Sentinel, bro. They were like, and Orlando Sentinel didn't care. They were like, get this out now. It was literally on the front page.
I love this screen that says Eisner doesn't care about you.
Oh, yeah, dude. Well, so, okay. For those that are curious, there was a website that was called Save Toad. So after October 22nd, 1997, the Orlando Sentinel article comes out. There is a University of Miami, a group of kids get together to try to save Toad. So they create a website in 97 called savetoad.com. And this is actually a snapshot from 1999. So this is after it actually has closed, but you can find a bunch of information and timelines on here. You can even find info about the people. They had snail mail. Here's Marty Sklar's address. Yeah. There's Michael Eisner's address.
Wow.
Al Weiss, like Dick Nunes, it literally gave you everybody's, and then it also gave you phone numbers that you could call so that you could reach out to these people in an attempt to save Toad. And the other thing that these folks had done is they created the Toad-ins. And Toad-in was when a bunch of Mr. Toad friends and followers would meet up in the parks. So they started them, and there's all these recollections. There's a ton of them. So I don't want to go through all of them, but some are better than others. But they documented every single Toad-in where all of these people would come out and Disney security would be there and they would stand outside talking about Mr. Toad. So I gotta talk about two of them real quick, if that's okay, Kate?
Yeah, go for it.
In this one photo, it has basically a kid that looks exactly like what I used to wear. He's wearing soap grind shoes, which I have, and I actually have pictures of myself in the parks wearing them.
Awesome.
Jean cargo shorts, which I also owned. Oversized t-shirt, 1,000%. He's holding a Sony Hi8, which is basically me in the parks. Like this was totally me. If I lived in Disney at that time, this would have been me. I love how it says NWO, New War Order. And then Save Toad. And yeah, these guys documented it and whatnot. And I'll show you the t-shirts a little bit later because they did have some nonprofit things that they were putting together in hopes of trying to save Toad. But let me read the account of the December 7th, 1997. When I and my friends arrived at Mr. Toad's a little after noon, a couple things were disturbing. This is the very first Toad-in. No one, not any other Toad fans were there. There were two.
What?
It was awful, but there was an awful lot of Disney security there. So there was literally 4 people there. Eventually, some other Toad supporters showed up and things beginning to look up. Still no reporters, though, and no photographers. Only a few of them were wearing their Save Toad shirts, which they do sell. I'll show you in a little bit. I think a lot of people might have been intimidated by the idea of getting kicked out of the park or losing their passes or something, and you certainly can't blame Disney employees for not taking part. As we were hanging out, we spotted at least 3 groups of trench-coated, earpiece-wearing security personnel, as well as several plainclothes security and some security disguised as janitorial personnel. Plus, some more security. After a while, people started approaching us and asked us if there were people had heard about on television on Saturday night. Our story had been covered by Orlando's Channel 9, which was an ABC affiliate, and an unknown number of other stations around the country. One person even heard that it was being talked about in California. So then they talk about how they reached out to a ton of reporters, and most of them never replied. Reporters were interested in it, but here's something. So let's go 1 week later, December 14, 1997. The day started annoyingly enough. Channel 9, the Orlando ABC affiliate, called me at 9 a.m. to tell me they could not make the 10:30 a.m. toad-in because it was on Disney property. They had press release since Wednesday, so there wasn't much of an excuse for their behavior. But there you are. These people are like ticked that press didn't cover it. They told me that they had an ABC national news team ready to go in, but since Disney owns ABC, they weren't able to go in and cover the story. After some discussion, they told me that they'd send out an undercover news team to get past security, but we never heard from them. And since I left a message on my machine saying that Disney stopped them at the gate. So I'm not sure if I even believe that. If they are telling the truth, they certainly didn't try very hard. And they do several more. Like there's at least 8 toad-ins that happen. And the sad thing about all of this is that you finally get news. So there's a press release released from Disney on September 2nd, 1998. So this is just under a year after that October 22nd, 1997 Orlando Sentinel rumor came out. And they said on September 2nd, 1998, Mr. Toad will finally close in 5 days.
Yeah.
People had less than a week to go and prepare for Mr. Toad closing forever and would be replaced by Winnie the Pooh.
That's so sad.
There are some really fun postcards and stuff. They had Motor Mania is not a crime, and you could write it directly to the president of Walt Disney Attractions. And they also had I gotta pull up let me find where their t-shirts are, because their t-shirts were really cool. See the shirt. Here we go. So good.
Oh yeah.
So they had merch, and you would get those postcards for free if you bought the merch. So it said "Save Mr. Toad's Wild Ride" on the front, and it had these weird characters. Toad's dead, and then on the back it said "Ask me why Mickey is killing Mr. Toad" with a bunch of mushrooms, and it said "SaveToad.com." And so at the toad-ins, they would all wear these bright green and purple. And it's kind of cool. This is just cool to me because we talked about Mr. Toad and how it originally started in that medieval tent style. At this point, it was way past that medieval tent, but they elected to do that style for their toad-in shirts.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you see that they took the Mr. Toad statue that's on the sign for Wild Ride, and they put an X wood, he's been removed, and then he's laying down and holding a lily with X's in his eyes.
He's pushing up daisies, you know.
He is.
Yeah,
it's a shirt, and it's
I like how somebody's holding their Mickey ears and crying. There's another guy who's got Mickey ears and crying. There's a girl holding his hand. She's crying. And then there's a toad ghost coming out from under it. It's very spooky, tadpole looking frog ghost head. I feel like I should do a limited run of this t-shirt.
Yeah.
You know, I doubt these guys care.
Yeah. Oh, so interesting. I feel so I had a couple of things that they communicated their concern to other guests while they were there, and they also hand out flyers that read "Tell Pooh to go to hell," because that's what was replacing it was Pooh. And they also hired a plane to fly a pro-toad banner above the park and rode the attraction again and again and again. But
oh my God.
Of course.
These guys are nuts in the best way possible. They're crazy.
But so none of it was enough to save Mr. Toad. And so Jeff Muscat was one of the people that started this website, and he published a special op-ed the next day after it closed in the Palm Beach Post. And it said, "Every day I check my inbox and get angry all over again. Every day someone hears about this for the first time and is just as upset as I was back in October. Every day I read messages filled with words like heartbroken, travesty, and some other words that aren't very polite. Every day I read stories of those who experienced their first kiss or their last happy days with their grandparents on the ride. Their first kiss, that's really something. Stories of the wonder that they experienced when they went on the ride for the first time with their parents and the reflection of that joy in their own children's eyes 20 years later. Letters from little kids who can barely type and desperate letters from people who were moved to tears when they heard the news. Letters from Disney employees who still can't believe what their bosses have done, thanking me profusely for stepping up and trying to do something about it. So it just really highlights like how passionate Disney fans get about their favorite attractions disappearing, which we have seen recently with Splash Mountain. I think, is our modern equivalent here of this, that the nostalgia. Why are they so upset? It's the nostalgia, the memories they had with the people they loved in those particular places. We connect with these rides on this like super meaningful level, and I think that when it feels like part of us, that when they take that down, they destroy it, they change it, it feels like they're erasing something, part of us or part of our memories. And it feels like cruel, and, that they don't care, and that's where we see a lot of that come out in this protest in particular, just like Michael Eisner doesn't care about you. It's almost like he's personally attacking you by removing this ride, which wasn't the intention.
They definitely had people on the inside for the toad-ins, because why would you actually do the toad-ins based on a rumor? They must have really felt strongly, because they started protesting in December 7th of 1997 and continued them through the 90s, but they wouldn't have been able to do toad-ins with only 5 days. So that's probably a internal corporate decision so that you couldn't organize. But from a guest perspective, like, they really ruined it for guests who wanted to still enjoy the ride. Like, we still have a sunset period with Dinosaur. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. People can go on it a couple more times.
Yeah. Or Muppets. Yep.
Yeah. They were really fast, though, about tearing this down. Fox Nolt in Passport to Dreams said, as soon as the last car rattled out of hell, they already were tearing down plywood walls and figures, and by morning, the attraction had been stripped down to the wall studs. It took them only a few hours to destroy something brilliant. So, like, they immediately got to work just ripping everything out.
That's so sad.
It's done. Rolly Crump did have a few thoughts of it. He said, I was really proud of doing the ride, and I was so upset when they took it out. I know that some people picketed the ride and said, save Mr. Toad. The problem is you have a bunch of designers, and management wants to keep the designers busy, so they decided to take a ride out and put a new ride in, which is kind of sad. And that was his take on them taking out the ride that he designed, which is also sad. So let's talk a little bit about what came next. Why were they pulling it out? What were they going to put in there next?
Yeah, so I found some concept art of what they were going to put in there next, which was the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, which is the dark ride that takes over the space and is currently operating out the Magic Kingdom. And you see the tree of Sanders, so the house of Mr. Sanders, and then you see some of the illustrations. And I think this actually pretty much categorizes what it looks like today, as we do get the garden, we do get storytelling pieces. You can actually go into the house of Sanders. And so I think they land on the concept for this. And it's mainly to Kate's point. Well, why the heck are they even doing this? Well, they're doing it because Winnie the Pooh is a lot more popular IP. So they figure they could probably sell more merch. They can make more films, and Winnie the Pooh would be much more successful rather than something that is dead IP that they are not going to continue on with. So we'll start there. What do you got to say, Kate?
When Winnie the Pooh opened, the facade actually changed. Winnie the Pooh opened in June 22nd of 1999. So it doesn't look like it does now. We're used to that big tree being out front. That actually didn't come until 2010. When it first opened, it looked like this, which is very similar to Mr. Toad, just repainted with new signs. They even left up the shields and just changed the colors on them. So
it's crazy.
Very, very similar to what it was. It's not like it is now with the Sanders house.
I do like I have to admit, though, the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh sign is really good.
It is. It has all the characters kind of coming out of it, which is also a little bit of a nod to the queue of Mr. Toad, where it had those tableaus of all the characters. And I didn't really think of that until now, but it has that similar feel to it. So there are a few things that are inside Winnie the Pooh that are a tribute to Mr. Toad. The one that most people know about is the one on the left hand side in Owl's house scene. There is a picture of Toad handing the deed to Toad Hall over to Owl, likely close to the portion of this attraction where Toad Hall roughly was, or at least some of the scenes of Toad Hall was. So I think that's actually really fun that it's kind of in the same area. based on the layout. There's also a picture on the floor to the right-hand side of Molly kind of like tipping his hat to Pooh, who has a whole bunch of honey pots and is kind of waving to him, which is a nod to Toad Hall as well. And you see when we saw Molly kind of tipping his hat to us. So I think it's fun that they pulled that directly forward into the attraction. Another thing that we see that's a remnant of Toad that's in the parks, of course, is over in the Haunted Mansion in the Pet Cemetery. And we see a Toad statue. And this is based off of an old souvenir maquette they used to sell in the gift shop.
It was like a bronze. It looked really cool.
Mm-hmm. And it's rumored to have this epitaph near him. Some people say it's on the backhand side that says, "Dear Mr. Toad, it's sad but true, not nearly as marketable as Winnie the Pooh." And I've heard this.
That is so true. Oh my God, dude. That's crazy.
But, however, I have never seen a picture of this ever, and I've only heard rumors about it. And so I actually did ask I asked our friend Kevin Lively, who's a former Imagineer and knows a lot about the Haunted Mansion, if he's ever heard of it. And he said, no, he's never heard of that. And can't imagine that ever being in the budget. And that's kind of what I think, too.
No, nobody would approve making of that.
No.
But it is true that probably an Imagineer or somebody in creative said that.
Oh, I'm sure at some point somebody said it and made it and then passed it along. And now it's just kind of, it lives out there. But I don't think it would ever have gotten approved because it directly like contradicts what the company did.
Yep.
So I don't think that actually exists, but it is a rumor that's out there. And that's pretty much all I have for Mr. Toad in the park.
I've got two other things.
Okay.
So it's not like Mr. Toad is completely dead. We do see him come back quite frequently when it comes to merch. So very popular. For the 50th, they brought back the Toad buckets, which were quite funny. They were really fun. Like they actually were in the Toad car. It said Toady on it, and it did have like the murals and the checker print, kind of like the flags for the strap to hold it on, which I thought was really great. And then I actually pulled, I totally forgot I even did this, but I pulled from an old YouTube video I made when for the 50th menu, they brought back at Friar's Nook a bunch of food items. So they had the Wild Toad Bratburger with lettuce, tomato, pickle, American cheese, and tater bites.
I remember that.
They had the Mr. Toad cake, which is peanut butter, chocolate peanut butter mousse, salted caramel, and a frozen center. And then the Wild Ride, which was a frozen wild sour blueberry, raspberry, and it was topped with whipped cream and a black licorice tire. And it was the food itself, if you look at it, it was very marketable. Like it was really cute looking.
It was super cute.
You know? Yeah. And it was fun. I thought the dome cake was not very good, but I thought the burger was actually quite delicious, and especially from Friar's Nook, which is not known for burgers. They almost never serve burgers there. It's almost always tater tots. But yeah, he has been around in the parks, even though he's not around in the parks.
And he is still in Disneyland Paris as well, as a restaurant. So he exists over there, which we talked briefly about in this series. And we won't go into detail that. That would be a whole another episode. So maybe for another time to dig into that. But I got a really cute like jelly roll there that had little Mr. Toad sticking in the part. Yeah. So he still exists in those ways in the parks as well. Besides, of course, Disneyland, the ride's still there. So, but I found something that's really, really interesting here. Before we wrap up the end of this series, I found a modern Mr. Toad concept that a Imagineer Disney artist actually created for a way of bringing Mr. Toad back to the park. And Kirk, you're going to be so upset because this is amazing and it would have been incredible to have in the parks. So this is...
Let me see it.
So this is by Disney artist Eric Scales, who made some ideas in 2009 for how Toad could be revived and modernized. He worked as a freelancer for Imagineering and also as a character artist for Disneyland for 24 plus years. So he's definitely a Disney artist. His theme park design portfolio was active between 2008 to 2013, and this proposal was made before New Fantasyland in the Magic Kingdom existed, and before Seven Dwarfs Mine Train was placed in the former location of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, so the submarine voyage there. So you can see where it would have existed here. So if you're looking at this...
That is so cool.
Yeah, so if you're looking at this picture, it's like Mr. Toad is kind of like at the bottom of the screen where it existed, where Winnie the Pooh is now. And then this is essentially where Seven Dwarfs Mine Train is where this ride would have gone. So I have kind of not a full walkthrough of this, but I do have concept art and then his ideas for what this would have been like. So I'm going to take you through it here. We're going to start. This is kind of a summary of what it would have been. It says, Mr. Toad's Motor Mania will be an elaborately themed attraction which combines elements of a traditional dark ride and a high-speed outdoor track. So think similar to Radiator Springs Racers.
Yeah, yeah. And it kind of, like, honestly, when you look at the vibe from the concept art, where they dip into the water like that, it reminds me of some of the concept art from Cars Land. So if anything, we still kind of get a little taste of Toad in some of the concepts moving forward with things that are actually happening in the Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, I think they did potentially take a few of these ideas forward for that as well. But it's not just Radiator Springs Racers. It's also maybe like combined with the ideas of like Autopia or Tomorrowland Speedway and also Test Track. It has kind of like combined a whole bunch of these ideas together. So dark ride inside and a high-speed car ride outside was the general concept. And it said Toad Hall would serve as a ride's entrance and exit. Guests would enter Toad Hall where they learned that they may be Toad's only hope of once again breaking out of the Tower of London, which you see here.
Help me, Toady One Kenobi. You're my only hope.
So you can see the Tower of London is very prominent in this. It's kind of up on the hill as the highlight of this, but there is Toad Hall down in the front. And then after successfully escaping the tower and wreaking havoc on the English countryside, guest vehicles will splash across the river before plunging into the main show building and the Wild Wood, a dark and dangerous place. So here at the beginning here, this is where guests would have approached Mr. Toad's Motor Mania and find themselves at the edge of a beautiful stretch of English countryside. And in the distance, Toad Hall, the ancestral home of J. Thaddeus Toad. To the right of Toad Hall is Ratty's house, built on the edge of the river and beneath the drooping boughs of an aged willow tree. We can even see guests enjoying a pleasant meal on Ratty's riverside deck, for he had recently opened his home up to offer refreshments to all those visiting this formerly peaceful end of the river. So it really makes me think of like the restaurant we got in Disneyland Paris. But like, how amazing would that be to like have a riverside restaurant?
Could you imagine? And it reminds me of Flo's. You know how Flo's like butts right up against the outdoor and it's like really thrilling to watch that go by? Like, I feel that's how I imagine we're going to see with Cars is they're going to give us some sort of restaurant or even snack stand or something that gets a great overview of this frontier, mesa landscape,
I hope so.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But this is so cool.
Isn't it cool?
I didn't see this one. This is freaking amazing.
Wouldn't it have been amazing to have like, riverside dining in the Magic Kingdom? Like how wonderful that would have been.
I look at Aunt Polly's every day and go, yeah, that'll never, ever seen Aunt Polly's ever open.
I know, but it could have been great. So this could have
been great.
I love this idea. I mean, he really put a lot of wonderful thought into this. So anyway, going on, you step onto the stone bridge that spans the river and they pass under an ornate archway. Which as you can see here. And he also did a version of what it would look like at night all lit up, which I thought was really fun as well. And it kind of like glows and has a big picture of Mr. Toad in the middle and it says Motor Mania, which throws back to the original Bruce Bushman concept, which was going to be called Motor Mania. So really lots of Disney history in this one. Then you see a fountain of Mr. Toad, and Eric said, I wanted Toad Hall to have a fountain at its entrance to add a bit of water and motion to this area, which would ultimately be queue area theme to a garden at the entrance of the house. So he did like a Google search for like English fountain or Tudor fountain, which you can see this is actually his Google search results that were the inspiration for this fountain. And
where did you get these photos, dude?
This is his website, his portfolio that's online.
He has all of it up there?
All of it. Well, yeah, but it's not the whole ride. It like finishes early. But yeah, isn't this amazing?
This is amazing because I went to his site and I guess I just missed some of these things. That's so cool.
Well, he talks about his inspiration for this idea for this fountain. He said, I decided it would be best if this fountain appeared to have been in the family for some generations. So the toad on my fountain is not our toad, but just a toad, perhaps one of J. Thaddeus's relatives, or more likely simply a beautiful statue made in the toad image. He is, of course, striking a very toad-like pose. He's got his arms in the air. He's wearing a toga, which I guess means that perhaps Toad's personality can trace itself back through the family line. And then he had the detail on the fountain. You can see like Toad looks like he's like spouting water. So he did have an up close version. And two sides had Toad with his eyes closed, and two had his eyes open. So it's depending on what side you're looking at. And then we enter into Toad Hall. While waiting in the queue, we learn that Toad has once again been imprisoned, this time for his reckless driving. The queue winds through Toad's home and ends up in the carriage house, which you can see here. This is the carriage house, and here we are loaded into an antique motor car and zoom out onto the grounds. Barreling through the crowded streets of London, we avoid various obstacles, forcing the townspeople to scatter for safety. So just like the rides we've been looking at. As we leave behind the various businesses and residences of the city, our car heads for our destination, the forbidding Tower of London. Which you can see a close-up here.
Ooh.
Which I love. That looks like the windows have like two eyes and a mouth that's open, like in shock. So I love
what the tower eyes see.
What the tower eyes see, exactly, yes. Barreling through the gates, we are surprised to find that the guards are unconscious, which we see them here, slumped against the wall with large lumps on their heads. And then, with a sudden crash, Toad flies into view. He's using the ball and chain around his ankle to careen around the cell, smashing into the stone walls, the unconscious guard's keys in his hands. This illusion is created with the use of strategic glass panels and digital animation of Toad, which is projected from areas beyond guest view. So I think this is really fun because you can see Toad. He has, there's like a static picture of him, which we'll see in a moment, that he's like hitchhiking with his ball and chain. But his shadow that's projected actually looks like he's removing his ball and chain, and laughing, which is really fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so this shows...
This would have been so good.
I know. Ho ho, you're just in time, Toad says, building up momentum. Toad hurls his ball over our heads thanks to the same digital projection technique and goes sailing out of sight. We pursue and see Toad's shadow, another projection on the far wall, unlocking his shackles. As our car rounds a pillar, we see that Toad, in the flesh, as an audio animatronic figure, free of his ball and chain and gesturing to the large prison door, which is opening for our escape. A loud train whistle is heard. "There's my ride now," says Toad as we escape the tower. Having escaped near death from an oncoming train, we are relieved to find our car back among the pleasant green hills of the English countryside. We see sheep here and there, but our noisy approach causes them to scatter and disrupts the daily life of the shepherds and their flocks. And I love this scene. This is so Mark Davis coded. So even a cunning wolf about to pounce can't help but stop and stare as we pass. So there's an animatronic sheep. It says, animatronic sheep lazily eating grass. Wolf behind him is projected silhouette. Wolf rears up to attack. But then, passing guest vehicle, reaction in both characters. Sheep's eyes go wide and his head follows our car. Wolf also stops and watches the car go by. Whole scene resets before next car. So it's basically like this wolf is about to get this sheep, and the sheep has no idea. And then they both see the car go by and they both stop what they're doing and like watch the car go by.
That is great.
Isn't that a fantastic gag? I love it.
Yeah. Oh, God, they should have made this.
I know. So one poor shepherd finds his entire flock cowering in his arms. The tower of sheep totters precariously over our car as we pass. So basically all the sheep that were like on the bridge in Disneyland actually are like piled into these guys, the farmer's arms, and he's holding them all in his arms, and they're all looking terrified, like they're about to fall over in this stack of sheep, which is just lovely. And you can see the castle in the background and whatnot as the cars are going through this dirt road. Finally, down the hill, our car heads towards the river. Before we can apply the brakes, we plunge straight in, causing quite a commotion with the waves we cause. Many an animal out enjoying a row shout recriminations at us while they try to get their boats under control again. When cars splash across the river, rat and other animals shout and struggle to regain control of their boats. All figures would be weatherproof and simple in their motions. The illusion is helped by the soundtrack, the natural motion of the boat and oars, and the speed at which guest cars pass the figures. But the river is narrow at this point, and we see a pack of weasels. Kirk, I think you're going to love this one. We see a pack of weasels waiting for us on the other bank. We can tell by the way they greedily eye our motor car that they are up to no good. As our car reaches the other bank, we send up a great splash, and the surprised weasels are left to soak on the riverbank. So you can see them here getting splashed by the car. But this one is fun because it says weasel figure goes from threatening pose to wilted and dripping wet. Our path turns away from the river and takes us toward the looming trees. In the shadowy glen, we see the house of Mr. Mole, and our car takes us in. And unfortunately, this is where the concept ends. So he does not go on to explain anywhere what happens at the end of the ride, but it looks like we do go back indoors. And my guess is probably do end up in the hot place if I had to guess. I think it would be crazy to have this ride and not have it end up there would be a real shame.
Yeah.
But that's all she wrote. But isn't that a fantastic concept?
That is awesome.
And I'm so sad that they didn't build this because this would have been amazing. They still should. They should still build this. In my mind, this would be a huge hit.
Is Eric still around?
Yeah. I don't know if he's still working for Disney. I think he might have retired from Disney.
You need to reach out to him and ask for more.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do that because I'd really love to know how this concept ends. Like,
he would love to explain it, I'm sure.
Yeah. So anyway, I just thought that was something to share that is a a fitting end to the series, is like what could have been, but we didn't get it, but still
Disney! See, the problem is, Michael Eisner would have made this.
Michael Eisner didn't. He tore it out.
But he would have made this. He would have made the Motor Mania.
Yeah, I don't know about that. See, by the time, something I didn't point out, when they decided to remove Mr. Toad was after we lost Frank Wells. Remember how I always said 1994 was so critical because Frank Wells perished in that terrible accident. And he was the, counterpart to Michael Eisner. I think he balanced him out really well and kept him in check. And I don't think that Mr. Toad would have been removed had Frank Wells still lived. I think that this is Michael Eisner kind of going off the rails, making his own
Objection,
decisions.
speculation. Sustained.
Yeah. So anyway, I do think that this was one of his worst decisions, was removing Mr. Toad. I think that they could have still had
Objection, bias.
they could have put Winnie the Pooh. There's so much space in the Magic Kingdom. They could have figured out something. It was still a popular ride. It's still like people were still going on it, and they had to increase capacity because it was so popular. So why remove it?
What I don't get is why on earth did they not do the refurb like they did in Disneyland? Because that happened in the 80s. There was plenty of time for them to make that change, to upgrade or enhance if they felt like it was feeling dated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in 1993, they didn't do that. They just changed the cars and a couple small other things, but that's pretty much it. But I do have something, unless you have anything else about that concept, I have one last thing.
Yeah, shoot.
So I just thought it would be really fun to end this series with a quote that's actually from A.A. Milne, who was the author of Winnie the Pooh, which is, of course, what replaced Mr. Toad.
Boo! I hate this idea. Boo!
No,
I hate this.
You're going to like this one, I think. So they're talking about the book that Toad was based on, which is The Wind in the Willows. So A.A. Milne says, "One does not argue about The Wind in the Willows. The young man gives it to the girl with whom he is in love, and, if she does not like it, asks her to return his letters. The older man tries it on his nephew and alters his will accordingly. The book is a test of character. We can't criticize it because it is criticizing us. But I must give you one word of warning. When you sit down to it, don't be so ridiculous as to suppose that you are sitting in judgment on my taste or on the art of Kenneth Grahame. You are merely sitting in judgment on yourself. You may be worthy, I don't know, but it is you who is on trial." So.
Boo!
No!
Boo!
I love what it says there, because it's saying that Mr. Toad it's so much about our own character, and that's what the whole book was about. And, it's like we are the ones on trial within the whole thing, which I think is really interesting.
Too meta. Boo!
Too meta! It's too deep. It's not that deep. It's not that deep, Kate. Fine.
It's just a ride, Kate.
It's just a ride. It's just an amusement
It's just a wild ride, Kate.
But I am sad that Mr. Toad is gone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't get that upset because he pops up from time to time in merch. And if you feel like riding a better version of it, just go to Disneyland, California.
It is a pretty great version. And I'm glad it's there. And people ask me all the time, they're like, do you think they're going to take it out? Do you think they're going to take it out? I was like, people will riot. They will talk about protests. They will riot if they try to remove that. It is one of the original classic 1955 attractions. It's like the oldest ride vehicle that exists. So
It's too beautiful. It's too successful. People love it. It's not going anywhere. It's straight up history. It's Walt Disney. No.
yeah. And it's Disneyland. Disneyland, they tend to respect history a lot more than Disney World. Disney World, they tend to tear stuff
Disney
out
World.
and take it out.
I came in like a wrecking ball. I never felt so...
Yeah.
Yeah, we crash and smash everything because who cares?
Yeah. They don't have the same respect.
What
for
history do we have?
there.
We're only around since the 70s, bro. We're like a baby. We're a little baby park.
You still have history.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We do. But
But anyway,
it's not the same.
I think that pretty much wraps up this entire series of Mr. Toad.
Oh
And
my
what a
gosh.
wild ride it has been.
I feel like I'm starting to get motor mania.
I look like my ears. That's how I feel.
Yes, you do. But that's how you normally look.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Appreciate that.
I don't know. Toad's pretty, not a bad guy.
As for what's coming next, I know that we haven't quite figured out what we're doing for our next episode. I know we're going to do...
We need a palate cleanser.
Yeah, we're going to do something simple here in between before we jump into another series. But I do think our next series, do you want to tell them what it is, Kirk?
The Tower of Terror.
Which I think a lot of people have already said they're excited about, who we've mentioned it to.
Yeah.
So I cannot wait for that.
We've talked ad nauseum about how much we desperately want to do the Tower of Terror, and it's not like we were thinking that Mr. Toad would become such a premier series, but the more we dug into it and the more we realized that there literally is no history on it anywhere, we felt, okay, well, let's make a compendium for this before we do a big series, and it just kind of ballooned from there. But Tower of Terror is my perennial favorite at studios, and there's been so many iterations, so much history, so many storytelling changes throughout all of the different parks, and I know a lot of people are looking forward to learning about the Twilight Zone's Tower of Terror.
That might be the rest of our year because there's a lot of details in the Tower of Terror.
Buckle up and pull that yellow strap because you ain't going nowhere.
So that's what we'll be jumping into next. But thank you for joining us for this episode and this series on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. It's been really, really fun to dig into this one with you guys. And Kirk, do you have any final thoughts here as we wrap up this series?
I don't know. You know what? I do. Semper absurda, kids.
Mm-hmm.
Always stay absurd.
Yeah. Toady acceleratio. A speeding toad is always absurd. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being with us for this episode of Distory. We really appreciate that you guys are hanging out with us always. And we'll see you next time for another episode of Distory.